Did you know that in one corner of Indonesia, there are grandmothers who have been dead for years, yet still get dressed every morning, offered coffee, and spoken to as if they never left? It sounds like a horror story. It isn't. Among the Toraja people of Sulawesi, a corpse is not a corpse. It's a person who is simply sick, waiting patiently for a party. And that party can take a very long time to arrive. Here's why this matters to you. Everything you've been taught about death, the rush to bury, the closed casket, the awkward silence, the Toraja quietly reject all of it. They live for centuries in the highlands of South Sulawesi, and the key players in this story are the living families and their beloved dead, who share the same house for months, sometimes years. One pattern to grasp up front. To the Toraja, the moment your heart stops is not the end. This next part changes the whole picture. Start with the word they use. When a Toraja person dies, the family does not call them dead. They call them tumakula, which means a sick person, or the one who is sleeping. And they mean it literally. The body is kept in the family home, wrapped in layers of cloth, and treated as a living member of the household. Food is brought to them. Water is offered. Someone talks to them, tells them the day's news, keeps them company. What this means for you is simple, but strange to sit with. Grief here is not something to move past quickly. It's a relationship that continues. Now, how is the body not decaying in a tropical climate? Historically, families used plants and herbs to slow decomposition. According to All That's Interesting, modern Toraja families often use a formaldehyde solution to preserve the body, essentially mummifying their loved one at home. If you're getting something out of this, a like pushes it further, so the deceased can stay in the house for weeks, months, in some cases, years, all while the family saves up for what comes next. Most coverage stops here. The real story doesn't. Here's the part that reframes everything. The reason the body waits so long is money and prestige. A proper Toraja funeral is not a quiet affair. It is the single most important, most expensive ceremony of a person's entire life, and it happens after they die. This event is called Rambu Solo, and it can involve hundreds of guests, days of feasting, music, dancing, and the ritual sacrifice of water buffalo and pigs. And not just any buffalo. The Toraja prize a spotted, blue-eyed buffalo called the Tidong Salico, and a single prize specimen can sell for the price of a car. Sometimes several cars. The villain in this story, if there is one, is expectation itself. Families feel enormous social pressure to hold a funeral grand enough to honor the deceased and reflect the family's standing. So they wait, they work, they pool resources across the whole extended clan. A person who dies poor may be kept at home for years until the family can afford to send them off correctly. The last piece is the one that reframes everything. Because the funeral is not the goodbye. It's the beginning of the next chapter. The Toraja believe the soul travels to Puya, the land of souls, and the sacrificed buffalo carry the deceased on that journey. Without the ceremony, the soul is stuck, wandering, unable to reach the afterlife. So the delay isn't neglect, it's devotion. They would rather keep you home for 3 years than send you off unprepared. Think about what that means for how they see time. Death is not a deadline. It's a phase you pass through slowly, surrounded by people who refuse to let you go until they can do it properly. And even after the funeral, the relationship still isn't over, not even close. Here is the single strangest part, and it closes every loop. Every few years, usually in August, the Toraja hold a ceremony called Manini, which translates roughly to the ceremony of cleaning corpses. Families return to the tombs, remove their deceased relatives, and bring them back into the sunlight. They clean the bodies, they comb the hair, they dress the dead in fresh, fashionable clothing, new sunglasses, a favorite shirt, sometimes a cigarette placed between the fingers, and then they take pictures, together. The living and the dead, posing side by side, smiling. Grandparents who died decades ago, standing propped up among their grandchildren. Remember that prized spotted buffalo? Its price can climb past 500 million Indonesian rupiah, tens of thousands of US dollars for a single animal. That is how seriously they take sending someone home. Here is my prediction. As tourism to Sulawesi grows, the world will keep framing Manin as macabre. The Toraja will keep seeing it as love, and they are the ones who are right. Before I go, here is your historical footnote of the day. The Toraja are not the only culture that refuse to let the dead stay buried. In Madagascar, the Malagasy people practice something called famadihana, the turning of the bones. Every 5 to 7 years, families exhale their ancestors from the crypts, wrap them in fresh silk shrouds, and dance with the wrapped bodies around the tomb to live music before returning them underground. It matters because it proves the Toraja are part of a much larger human pattern we rarely talk about. For much of history, across the globe, the dead were not gone. They were guests. Colonial and religious authorities tried to stamp out both practices as pagan. Both survived anyway, quietly, in the highlands and the villages, passed down in defiance. That is your footnote for today. If the image of a family combing their grandmother's hair years after her death stayed with you, sit with why it feels unsettling, because it might say more about how we hide from death than how they honor it. Subscribe to Weird History. New breakdown every day. See you in the next one.